What is going on, everyone? Matt here for GR Weekly, GrindRatings.com. And oh boy, another week of NFL action in the books. And man, we got 14 games to cover today. We got a Monday Night Football game between the Raiders and the Chargers coming up that I want to watch in just under an hour. So we got no time to waste. We had some big fantasy explosions this week out of Kansas City, Cordell Patterson going on, some weird running back situations going on in like Miami, the New England game last night, total dud for that big Brady Bowl. So we're going to get right into it and waste absolutely no time. So we're going to start off here with the Washington-Atlanta game, a game that I was a little hesitant in saying the over-under seemed correct from the get-go, 1.5 spread. Washington does end up winning 34-30, so I actually was a little wrong on that for most of the day. Starting over on the Washington side, we gain one, lose one in this game. We get back Curtis Samuel, and that was our one big thing. What was Curtis Samuel going to look like in this game? We'll lose Logan Thomas, though, week to week with a hamstring issue. We did see Antonio Gibson also limp off the field at a time. Did come off for a few plays. Got hit pretty hard in the ribs via PFF.com. McKissick most likely rostered in most leagues, but we'll shoot up if Gibson were to miss any time. But back to Samuel, 25 of 67 offensive snaps is good to see for him, considering it is his first game back. The issues we want to see this game was what the point split would be, though, between him and Logan Thomas. And if Thomas is out, we're not seeing exactly how that's going to split up as the main sort of guy behind the two big guys in Gibson and McLaurin. McLaurin, absolutely explodes in this game. Tyler Heineke with that big, just throw it up there and see if he comes down with it sort of play for them to go up late. But Heineke, I think he should start rest of the season for Washington at this point. Back-to-back games with 3 or more scores, 8.8 yards per attempt on the season. I'm liking what he's doing, stepping into contact, trying to make these throws, trying to win them football games. I think the issue with people about Heineke before we saw exactly what he can do was we worried if they're going to be losing the run and gun sort of style that, Ryan Fitzpatrick has been known to do, the gunslinger that he is. But we're seeing Heineke play a very similar style. And if he's going to be doing the same sort of work that Fitzpatrick was accustomed to doing, well, then it's all the same sort of kudos for us in that sort of regard. I think he's going to be a solid QB2 option. There may be weeks going forward with the buys because they are going to be right around the corner. I believe they start in week 6 this year. We might have some week 5, but I'm not particularly sure. I got to watch for that one. But with him really slinging around, and this Washington defense is a mirage. No longer treat as a tough matchup to me. 375 total yards allowed in all 4 games. 29 points or more allowed in the last 3. One of those games being against the Giants, who we thought was going to be a bad offense, but there's a lot of optimism. I'm going to talk about that game more in a little bit. But the Washington defense, I think you can go ahead and start dropping if you're so inclined to do so. There are better defenses out there, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing as the overall unit right now for Washington. McLaurin and Gibson, if they're both healthy and ready to go, both excellent players for sure. Over to the Atlanta side, one big thing going into the game was, can we have a single completion of 20-plus air yards? We did have a few in this game. We actually had 2, so that's very nice to see. But the real one big thing is Cordell Patterson, right? So last week, our big trade sell high was Kareem Hunt. This week, it's Cordell Patterson. He's averaging 0.8 fantasy points currently per snap. Not per touch, because that's around 1.5 points, but per snap. If he's on the field, he's getting a ton of fantasy points in situations where he should not be doing so. Why? Because his average so far for the season is around 25 snaps per game. He's not being used enough consistently for us to really think of him as this type of play that is, because depending on your scoring format, he may be the highest scoring or second highest scoring, yada, for running back and receiver. Some sites have him listed as one or the other, depends on where you're playing at. But right now, when you're looking at these total points, this pace is ridiculous. Because let's talk about a guy like Christian McCaffrey, right? So Christian McCaffrey in 2019 had 471 fantasy points. And that was on 1,039 snaps in full PPR. That was 0.45 fantasy points per snap. At 0.8 fantasy points, we'd be looking at like around 830 something points for McCaffrey, who we consider the best player in fantasy football. Is Cordell Patterson better than Christian McCaffrey? I don't think so. I like to think that a 3-touchdown game is not really something we can account for. And this is not something that we can really look to see as being accountable, repeatable work. Calvin Ridley was down on him going into the week. My wires were 28 for 80 yards on 7 receptions in half PPR. He can probably finish around that. Very good at full PPR, but the half PPR, you lose out on those receptions a little bit. But him and Pitts, and I think the Pitts trade should be flying. After another game of 6 more targets, 3 on the season, has yet to hit 75 yards receiving. Now, if you were someone who invested heavily in Pitts, I was not one of them. I only have one of 18 teams with Kyle Pitts. I've said it made sense when he's drafted at a certain point. Never the second or third round he was going. With the 4th, 5th, whatever it may be, was a better sort of falling spot for him. If you were someone who invested in Pitts, though, you should technically still be fine with this slow start, because either you were way too optimistic or you're still patient enough to say that once Pitts hits, he's going to hit big. So Patterson taking just so much of the scoring work and all these big plays that are going on, it has hurt Ridley. It has hurt Pitts. Mike Davis in a very inefficient sort of game here. 13 carries for 14 yards, thus score through the air, though. We didn't expect him to take all this work. Wayne Gallman was even active for this game, so that's even a bigger hit against Davis, who I did not recommend it to start this week. I didn't recommend Patterson either, but not a lot of people did. The scoring that he had, the 30-plus fantasy points, only a few players are going to even outscore that at his position, whatever it may be. So just something, if you're looking at things in a small scope, we saw this with Ezekiel Elliott after his first game against Tampa Bay, which your teams are not even like trying to run on anymore because the run defense is so strong. If you're looking at fantasy, it's a week by week sort of game in terms of how you're setting your lineups and how you're trying to do matchups, but on a week per week sort of situation when you're looking at the overall rest of season strength for players. So if you're treating Elliott like Patterson right now, Patterson should be a mega sell high, because if you're smart, you're going to think, okay, well, this is something unattainable. And yes, I either started him and got the beneficiary of these points, or you already missed out on it. Try and treat him. And if anyone's going to give you, higher than wide receiver 2 or RB2 sort of stuff for it, you get an RB1 or receiver or wide receiver 1 back. That is massive. So go make those trades. I have in 3 leagues. He'll be on the trade block in all 3 of them, I can assure you. Moving on to Tennessee versus New York Jets. One of 2 New York teams to win overtime yesterday. New York Jets win 27-24. I thought this was going to be a total just skip it game. There's not much to talk about here sort of situation. But this is very much not something I was expecting, and I think not a lot of people were as well. But we're looking to see this game being the Jets continuing to be the team we stream defenses against, and we learned that even with a poor defense in the Tennessee Titans, at a certain point, the New York Jets can function like a normal offense. Jamison Crowder helping that effect, that the Tennessee offense just allowing big plays downfield. Zach Wilson, he's not afraid to throw deep. We can at least say that. He will sling it out there. Now, in the past, it's led to interceptions left and right. It did not do so against Tennessee this week, which means I will not be recommending the Atlanta Falcons next week as just a immediate plug-and-play defense for streaming purposes. I think there are better places to go. I don't say the New York Jets offense is good. They've doubled their team total in like yards and points and all that sort of regards in this game alone. But it means we just can't say that a hot trash team like the Falcons defense can come in here and bully up on the New York Jets offense. I think they're actually going to be in London. So a gross London game for sure. But not much to learn on the Tennessee side, of course, with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones being out. Jeremy McNichols was the one who led the receivers in targets, 12 targets for 74 yards. Most of those came on a good portion of the 4th quarter and the overtime drives. With him being the 4th in snaps, it was very strange. Saw a target 1 every 4 snaps. Wanted Ferkser to stand out a little bit. We wanted to see more of Westbrook-Ikhine. But with Tannehill was always a safe sit with both Brown and Julio out. Just to be seen now how long it will be until they return. Until that point, it's the Derrick Henry show. And he didn't have the 700-yard game like we were somewhat expecting from him. But still a good portion of what Tennessee has been and will be with those 2 guys out is Derrick Henry. He is still the mainstay in this offense. Moving on. Real quick game, Houston versus Buffalo. Buffalo wins 40-0. The one big thing is is Cook's matchup proof, and the running backs are and really the whole team as what's consistent going to be for the Buffalo Bills. But Cooks remains the only Houston player worth rostering. New England, Indianapolis, and Arizona next 3 games. The very least, the offense is not very strong for New England. So hopefully we can't get completely boxed out because a good portion of what the total yards for Houston in this game was Brandon Cooks. Like he had 70% of the targets and 80% of the yards or what he had. It was a very low number on all accounts. Terrible team. This game went kind of specifically to plan. But I was worried on Sunday morning. Let's move over to the Buffalo side. My one fear Sunday morning was, is this game going to be so out of hand that at a certain point, if you didn't get on the scoring with the Buffalo players, were you going to be kind of left high and dry and not have as great a fantasy day as you were hoping? Josh Allen was fine, not great, like in the mid-20s in terms of what he finished for you. Didn't even play the whole game. Mitchell Trubisky got in, and he got a rushing touchdown himself. Cool. Singletary was fine. Moss scores, so he's got around 12 points in all formats. Good. Diggs was good, but not still a little disappointing. 114-yard day. Still feels disappointing in what the situation was. Sanders was fine. Beasley was terrible. Gabriel Davis, 2 targets for the last 3 weeks. Should not even be rostered. But Dawson Knox, I got right. 2 touchdowns are something. He's 100% tight end option going forward. We want guys who can score, and he scored each of the last 3 games. But that does mean there's a possibility that you've already missed out on the scoring and what he's worth, because tight end is such a crapshoot. So either he's going to be an option going forward, or he's going to go back to being just another guy. But for right now, at least in this Buffalo offense, and they're looking for him in the red zone, that is valuable. Whether or not he does come down with scores or targets or yada, 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 3 or 4 or 5 tight ends are good on a certain week, and half those guys are guys like CJ Uzomah, who no one started and no one even rosters. So tight end is what it is. So we just got to go with that account going forward. Moving over to Carolina versus Dallas. Dallas wins this game 36-24. Starting on the Carolina side, Sam Darnold is now the rushing leader in the NFL with 5 rushing touchdowns. So I like that. The problem is that he only has eyes for DJ Moore, who until further notice needs to really be considered a top 5-esque receiver in the NFL. 80 yards or a score in all 4 games, 11 targets in 3 straight. He has 1 touchdown off of his career high for a season of 4, and is on pace to double his pre-2021 total of touchdowns, which was 10. I'm super not salty that I was a year early on DJ Moore last year. I was very high on him. It's like my wide receiver 7 or 8 in redraft in the preseason. I had him all over the place, and now he's allowed to score. So what are you going to do? Robbie Anderson, season high of 11 targets, but a sub 50% catch rate. These are optimistic looks from him, but I'm not overtly encouraged to say he's a top 24 type of receiver. There's so many guys going to mix in and out with the matchups and who's hot and who's cold and this and that and the other thing. So something to be really accounted for with him. Chuba Hubbard did not set the world on fire here. He still remains a top 24 running back while Christian McCaffrey is out. But as soon as Christian McCaffrey is back in, he's back to the shelf. And Carolina's defense was shown just to be a product of matchups, even with the late interceptions, putting them in bad short field situations, which led to scoring. But it was very much a product of who they were playing, not how they were playing, I would like to say, through the first 3 weeks. Over to Dallas, though, a defense that I do think is very legit. Props to Dan Quinn, Cowboys DST. 2 interceptions in every game this season, 2 or more sacks in the last 3 games, 5 sacks in this game. This defense is no longer a joke. This is a competitive game situation on both sides of the ball now for the Dallas Cowboys. They made a point to go out and get talent in the offseason to not only bring in Quinn, but to make, free agent moves and decisions that would affect how this defense is going to play. But, between bringing in Curse and Keanu Neal and Micah Parsons, Kelvin Joseph was their 2nd-round pick. There was a lot of high picks used on defense. Parsons has been excellent. This is a defense that we've looked at to say, can they try and rectify what they were in the past? Because last year they were very not competitive on offense, which led to their defense suffering as well as being a just porous defense in the past where points were just scored at will. But now with them being so competitive on defense, Prescott is under 30 attempts for the third straight game. This is the first time in his career that this sort of stretch has occurred. Only 26 of 73 games in his entire career that he has had less than 30 attempts. So he's normally a guy who's airing the ball out. This is kind of what Dallas has been doing. But has this defensive upswing, along with Ezekiel Elliott's retirement being, a week and a half long, the receiving staff, had most of the collective days saved by scores in this, outside of Lamb, who has one of just his worst stat lines he's ever had, 2 for 13. No worry for me, though, on that one. But Elliott and the defense are playing very good football, and I think has really kind of hit into what the overall ceiling is for not only Dak, but also for the receivers. Cooper, does come down with a touchdown, but Lamb, poor stat line here. Schultz and Jarman also both score in this game, but Schultz once again looks like the stronger option. Going to be mixing as a top 15 sort of tight end until further notice. And that's kind of a soft top 15. It's really just a terrible position, but I think there is really just a lot of trust that's being put his way. So I think if Dallas is trusting him, I think you should be trusting him as well. Moving on to New York Giants versus New Orleans Saints. I had like 10 words total to talk about this game on Friday. So this is interesting to me. A game that at first, the one big thing is I had no one to really talk about in this game. It seems super bad on paper, but Daniel Jones and this New York Giants offense we need to talk about. Over 400 yards in this game. He's currently going to be probably 8th in the league in passing after the Monday Night Football game because Justin Herbert should pass him. Derek Carr is already ahead of him in passing yards, but currently has more yards than Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson. Giants offense definitely on the upswing after a bad stretch of early scheduling and injuries. In that week 2 game against Washington, there was not many teams I would say was in a bad, worse state to be on a short week than what the Giants were. Now it's Saquon Barkley healthy, Kenny Golladay healthy. The offense is looking like they're not something out of the 1980s, which is very much a compliment considering what they have been. They do have, particularly a not easy matchup. We are just talking about how that Dallas defense has seemed pretty impressive. They do have them next week in week 5. But Barkley, week to week, with back-to-back weeks of 90 total yards, multiple scores here, does get the winner in overtime. The Saquon Barkley window, I think, has firmly shut. He is a top whatever you want to say because there's not too many good running backs, or top 3, top 5, top 7. However many good running backs you think there are, Saquon Barkley is part of that. So maybe that's, Cook, McCaffrey, Kamara, Henry, him and Elliott. So top 6, just like it was in the preseason. So all the preseason guys who were pretty good, they're still good, which is good for us. Because last year we had half them be bad and half them be hurt. So this is nice to see that all the guys we wanted to be good are good. Kadarius Toney and John Ross effective in fill-in spots with Shepard and Darius Slayton sidelined. I am optimistic of what Kadarius Toney has been doing, mostly because after limited usage through the first few weeks, they are giving him opportunities to be just a football player. They're like, hey, just go out there and do the things we wanted you to do. This is why we spent, again, a first-round pick on him, which a lot of people might even forget, myself included, when I was on a show, the Brothers of Dynasty, towards the end of the preseason, where I completely forgot that he was, a football player. But Kenny Golladay, good, quite the performance here. And I thought was going to be a very bad spot. Still to be seen when Slayton and Shepard are back, what's going to look like, because through the first few weeks, Shepard was the primary option for him. Very successful in this offense that Garrett has been running. So Golladay getting his feet under him. If we can have the offense that it looked like, on all things, all cylinders going for the Giants outside of Evan Ingram, who's continued to disappoint. Matches for Dallas, the Rams, and the Panthers of the next 3 will be very interesting, I think, for the Giants offense-wise. All right, over to the New Orleans Saints. And what seemed like a layup on paper, one of the more disappointing teams on the weekend, the New Orleans Saints losing here in overtime. Winston's first game over 200 passing yards, fails to hit 250, though. Alvin Kamara, 26 carries, 0 targets. Callaway, kind of all of his game came on one play, 0 sacks on Daniel Jones. They failed on both sides of the ball. I thought this game was going to be boring, but this is a pretty sad showing from the New Orleans Saints. They need Michael Thomas. They need to be activated. but and they need him to be the guy that they want him to be, so their season can really start. They've had a very odd showing of it. Completely dominate Green Bay in week 1, completely lose like all their coaching staff against Carolina. This is an odd team. I don't think we've ever learned concrete information about New Orleans, and we're almost in week 5. This is one of the most I don't know what to make of it teams in the NFL. So I can't say that they're good or bad. They're just the Saints, and I don't think of them as a playoff caliber team, but I don't think of them as a total dumpster fire either. I don't know what to think of them. That's it. I don't know. Detroit for Chicago. Chicago wins 21-14. Starting with the Detroit side. Poor showing here from the real lines that we want to start week to week. Swift, Hawkinson, and Jamal Williams as a lower RB option. Khalif Raymond, though, needs to be looked at in deeper leagues. 10 targets last week, a score in this one. Not in any shallow waiver leagues. Just like, 12 teams with deep benches sort of looks. They need offense where they can. And if he's the one that's going to be showing up, we do some Quintus Cephas in this one as well. I just really can't recommend too many of them week to week because they're only the guys we want to be looked at. And when things are going their way, kind of tough matchups the past few weeks for Detroit, which again on paper was going to be the problem going into the season. They just had a very tough schedule ahead of them. Deandre Swift, though, does take a little bit of a hit, I think, in the rest of the season because again, the first 6 running backs from the preseason are probably I take confirmedly over whatever we're going to have from Deandre Swift. So it's really a matter of past those guys, what are we going to look at for the rest of the season? Is it going to be him or Nick Chubb? Is it going to be him or, maybe some people might be putting like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there or Cordell Patterson. So I still think Swift probably behind the first 6 guys I said before, but I think 7th or 8th, maybe Najee Harris ahead of him. There's a lot of names you can really mix in. It's just a kind of a glob there right after the first, confirmed sort of guys. Austin Eckler, I would take ahead of DeAndre Swift as well, probably ahead of a few of those guys in that top 6 as well. But we got to see what happens tonight. Who knows what can happen in this Chargers Raiders game. We're on to Chicago. Matt Nagy once again reiterates that Dalton is starting whenever he's healthy. And only 17 total attempts from this game. It's not like we've even seen enough from Justin Fields to say, yeah, that's a guy he really wants out there, even when he is able to play. 7 of those went Darnell Mooney's way because him and Robinson currently on, when they're on the field, I just can't say that they're trustworthy starts with Fields under center. At least with Dalton, maybe the play calling just decides that it's going to be pushing towards more passing because they can at least feel more comfortable with what he can do arm quality wise out of Dalton. I don't know. I don't know why there's such a big hang up from Nagy on using Andy Dalton in the way that he has. But the running backs is something to monitor here. Both Montgomery and Williams are injured. Williams a thigh bruise. Montgomery needs further testing, but the fear is not an ACL. So at the very least, if we can have Montgomery, who has a big showing here, 100 total yards, 2 scores, if we can have him be out there, great. If we're missing him and Williams, who's to say what they're going to do with Justin Fields? Because at least if they have Fields, maybe they're going to be, actually play calling some rushing work for him, which is not something they've really been doing. This is one of the things that we wanted Justin Fields to be as part of his repertoire. Because otherwise, Khalil Herbert would be next in line if both are out. And I'm not particularly excited in that. And Cole Kmet should not be rostered. Just doesn't, you can cut him. If you still have him, you can cut him. Moving on to Cleveland versus Minnesota, one of the lower scoring games on the whole day, 14-7. Starting over on the Cleveland side, currently Baker Mayfield is tied with Jacoby Brissett for the lowest amount of passing touchdowns in the league at 2. And Brissett has only started 2 games compared to Mayfield's 4. So that's something. Did not like Baker Mayfield going into the year. I thought this was going to be a boring offense that was just going to run a ton. Odell would get his, whatever he was going to be active. But this is pretty pathetic. Now, did Mayfield miss Odell Beckham deep? And if Beckham caught that pass, would have had like a 70 or 80 yard touchdown? Of course. And that would have helped Beckham's day, and it would have made Mayfield look less pathetic. But as of right now, Mayfield's doing exactly what I thought he would do from the preseason. So go for me. Over to that Moving on to the running backs. Our one big thing going through the week was Kareem Hunt because I was considering him one of the easiest sell highs. Scores again here. Nick Chubb does outrush him, though, for 100 total yards. But PPR, it's going to be going Hunt as the better day through the receiving game and the touchdown that he scored. Hunt, very easy trade away target once again. Career best 5.4 yards per attempt through 4 games. Also on pace for the most targets you'll see in a season. Now it is 17 games. So, but in a backup role, because that's technically what he is. He is the backup running back. Nick Chubb is the starter. Rookie season, 63 total targets. He's on pace for 64. Just something to note. Odell, like I said, one big pass away from the large game, but there's going to be better situations. Just bad offense on both sides of the ball here. Just both ineffective on first down. It was a very strange, third down, very strange game. Austin Hooper once again disappoints at a big score, big spot to score some points. Still can't trust a tight end over there in Cleveland. Cleveland DST, on the other hand, good on them limiting only 7 points to Minnesota. Unfortunately, the Chargers and the Cardinals in the next 2 weeks. Tough to determine if they will be a sit or not because there's been not so many great streaming defenses. We just saw Tennessee falter this week, as well as the Cincinnati Bengals against Jacksonville. So just something of note, I think the Cleveland defense is one of the better overall units that we can possibly roster right now. You know, guys like Pittsburgh and has not been a great defense. Washington has been a bust at defense. Just don't draft defenses high. That's the one thing I can tell you. On the Minnesota side, this was going to be the first real test for the Minnesota offense. And after a first drive touchdown, they were completely stalled out the rest of the game. Cook did not seem particularly right. They were less than 33% on third down. There's going to be better games ahead as a whole for the Minnesota offense. We knew this going into the game was going to be the real first test. They failed. Good thing for them. Matchups versus Detroit and Carolina, who are now not an elite defense in Carolina because it was just the matchups that was really giving them the boost. It should get them back on track in weeks 5 and 6. It's crazy that we're a month down in football, by the way. Just, talking about this from the preseason now, like how we're going to be in week 5. That's just that's something for me. So moving on though, Indianapolis versus Miami. Indianapolis wins this game 27-17. Our one big thing going into the game was the running backs, and good thing for Jonathan Taylor. Because if he did not score in this game, there's a team that just gave up 100 yards and a touchdown to Peyton Barber, I was going to lose my dang mind. Was stopped again from inside the 5-yard line. He's now 0 for 8 on the season. But with him establishing that he is the main running back, it is not Nyheim Hines. Hines with a very disappointing game. Do not understand what was a coaching decision or what have you. He muffs a punt in the first quarter, and he decides to play the exact same amount of snaps as Marlon Mack, who they want to trade away. But you got me on that one. I don't know what happened with Hines. But 2 solid touch work weeks for Hines, 2 complete duds. Hard to trust fully week to week on him. If you have Marlon Mack who wants to just depart for other lands, coming in and stealing the work that he did. But Taylor, we can at least be thankful that in a week where he should be a top 12 running back, he did perform as one. So we're happy on that regard, especially next week versus Baltimore. We need to see some good showings out of Taylor when you can. Receivers. Currently, only Jacoby Myers has more targets on the season than Michael Pittman's 36 without a touchdown. And since Myers is doomed to walk the earth forever without a touchdown, he has 163 targets currently in his career. He has no scores. Pittman, big buy opportunity, I think, especially after week 5. If they falter, God, I like that word, don't I? If they don't perform well in Baltimore, he's currently averaging 9 targets per game. There's a favorite target here for Carson Wentz, and it's Michael Pittman. Or maybe it's Wiley Cox because he scores twice in this game and whatever that is. But Michael Pittman is their primary target on this team. Go out and acquire him if you can for cheap after week 5 because he's going to be looked at, I think, in a big way again going forward, currently within the top 15 in targets for the position. Over to Miami. Myles Gaskin was our one big thing. There's not too much to talk about on the Miami side, but they completely decided to go against the run game in this one and not even target Gaskin with a total of 12 snaps. I dug for it. I did not see any injury situation go on with him, so I don't know really what happened there. But we can safely start him next. Safely sit him next week. They have Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay just allowed -1 rushing yards to New England. Don't start Myles Gaskin. And another play we got to talk about is Mike Gesicki. Seems to be a thing as long as Jacoby Brissett is under center. 20% target share here. Saw 12 targets last week or 11 targets. Brissett love for his tight ends is real. Mike Gesicki, as long as Brissett is under center, I do like him, especially in and against a Tampa Bay team that keeps losing corners. They keep giving up a good amount of points through the air. Just allowed 2 touchdowns to 2 different tight ends in that New England game. Kansas City versus Philadelphia. Kansas City wins this one 42-30. Once again, the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that you're going to want to start everyone you can against, and they're going to be the big points sort of spot on the week. They're allowing just 30 points, I believe, in every single game this season. Starting with the Kansas City side, Tyreek Hill versus that supposedly number 1 pass defense. Well, Mahomes and Hill went back to show everyone that they are the players that they are. Mahomes is the quarterback 1. Tyreek Hill, mixes in wherever you feel with the other guys. But, after 3 scores in this game and 100 billion yards, the 2 weeks of disappointment is fully over. They basically doubled every stat that Philadelphia was allowing to receivers, doubled after this week. Receptions and yards and touchdowns, everything just went up like 100%. Because of what Tyreek Hill was able to do against them. The Kelsey game, total blip. Almost not even worth mentioning. It was his worst fantasy game. Tyreek Hill just destroyed Philadelphia, so nothing to see here. But something to see here: Clyde Edwards-Helaire, back-to-back 100-yard games. Curious if the Buffalo and Washington games coming up mean anything to him. Top 15-esque running back in consideration, especially with the state of the position, if they're going to also continue to target him. For those who put trust in Clyde in draft season, they are finally now getting the player they at least want him to be. Not a RB1, but a high-end RB2 is what we want him to be, and he's showcasing that in back-to-back weeks. Over to the Philadelphia side, who everyone says is going to blame Jalen Hurts. Eagles did not even punt in this game. Sorry, the Chiefs just scored more points than you. I don't know why we keep blaming Jalen Hurts for everything. It's very strange. One big thing, we want to see some offensive consistency. Well, Hurts, Smith, Ertz, Goddard, all turn in pretty good offensive games here. Sanders, on the other hand, I have no idea what to make of him because he has like 9 carries or 7 carries over the last 2 weeks. They just don't want to include him. Kenneth Gainwell, currently the highest scoring back of the 2 on the season. And if Philadelphia is just falling into catch-up mode sort of situations and Sanders is not a part of those situations, then we're in a big problem here. Because currently Philadelphia is allowing some big scoring games, over 40 points in back-to-back games, and Miles Sanders apparently is no longer in consideration when they need to just start airing the ball out and pushing the envelope. So I prefer Miles Sanders to kind of Gainwell the rest of the season. Gainwell needs to 100% be rostered in any league that he's not. He probably should, it probably is already, but otherwise, if he's out there, I don't want to say that at some point he might take over the starting role from Sanders, but if any switch does happen, we should be out ahead of it instead of trying to scramble to see if he is available in your leagues. Arizona versus the LA Rams. Arizona wins this game 37-20. Man, 2 things are true about Arizona. 1, everyone on the team is capable of a 100-yard game or a touchdown or whatever it may be, or maybe multiple touchdowns. And you have no idea which one it's going to be on any given week because all the players besides Max Williams, that's right, Mad Max, has had either 100 total yards or scored in multiple games. Williams is the only one really not accounted for. Literally everyone else has done it. Done one or both. It's crazy. The team is a total toss-up. And am I still going to prefer DeAndre Hopkins as the wide receiver 1? Sure. I don't know if he can be ranked as a wide receiver 1 because it's not like they're focusing so heavily on him. It's really Kyler Murray is going to throw the ball to whoever's open. And some weeks it might be AJ Green or Christian Kirk. Chase Edmonds has the most receptions of anyone on the team. DeAndre Hopkins has the most touchdowns at 3 and the most targets and receptions of the receivers, but the most yards aren't his. It's very odd to say, which one of these guys is going to be the best one. You can almost rank all 4 of them back to back, and you might not be wrong because 1 or 2 of those guys are going to be wide receiver 2s or even better, and 2 of those guys are going to falter, and you have like just a total coin flip chance of the receivers of who's going to be that guy that week. James Conner has showed up in back-to-back week. Chase Edmonds has over 100 total yards, and this is against the Rams, an undefeated team. in their house, and is a good defense. And right now, I don't know who's going to slow Arizona down. This team is breaking the NFL, and there's really not much else can be said about that. Now, is Kyler Murray putting on absolute crazy fantasy point performance the last 2 weeks? No, but they're still just playing extremely good football on the offensive side. And if you can't contain him, it just everything else kind of falls apart because Murray just is so hard to contain. And I just don't. It's breaking my brain. You can obviously say, but I thought with the Rams here, this was going to be a big, show up game for who's going to be the real top dog in the NFL. And right now, it's the Arizona Cardinals. Over to the Rams side, not too much to talk about. Darrell Henderson. He is the guy there in that backfield. Does the Michelle fumble and 3 total touches, say he's completely gone? Possibly not. But Henderson needs to be traded as a top 20 running back. We like that Robert Woods scores in mega ultra garbage time, but still not extremely optimistic about him with Van Jefferson scoring before him and having a better game. And Cooper Kupp not able to go absolutely nuclear like he's been doing. 5 catches only on 13 targets, does not score. He is human and had to have at least one game where he doesn't completely break fantasy. So there we go. And we do have a question. Do I trade Cook, Lamb, or Godwin in Damian Harris for Henry? I'm going to assume Derrick Henry, Tyler Lockett, and Darrell Henderson. So straight up, I think so the first 2 are kind of net neutral because they're both going to be elite backs. So it's still, you're kind of playing with one or the other. Lamb, Godwin. I think you do. Yeah, because Darrell Henderson, I think, is going to be a much better player than Damian Harris, and the other players are all sort of even. Some people prefer Derrick Henry right now in full PPR. I think him and Cook, when healthy, right now Cook is not, I don't think, particularly 100% healthy. So I think it's probably a net neutral on the first 2 guys. I think I would prefer to hold on to Lamb still, even though we've seen, I was talking about earlier in the show that the Dallas Cowboys are not airing the ball out as much as they've been doing. 1, because of the good defensive play, and 2, because of the strong running that Ezekiel Elliott has been having over the first few weeks. But whatever your preference is, but I think you do, because I think Henderson is an actual upgrade for sure over Harris, and Henry and Lockett, I think, are on the same level as the other 2 players that are across from them. So if in reality you're getting the best, I think, end of the deal, just based on the slight improvement that you are getting, at least in one of the spots. But thank you for the question there, James. Moving on to the Seattle versus San Francisco game. Seattle wins 28-21. Poor showing, though, for most of the Seattle Seahawks, with Swain and Collins outscoring Carson and Lockett. Odd game in that regard. I think no new real issues, though, which is good for them, especially Tyler Lockett. We were appreciate for the follow. Thank you. I was worried about what the health was going to be coming from Tyler Lockett out of the hip from week 3. Considering that nothing went wrong with the hip in week 4, I think they're going to go back to being whatever the receiver he was beforehand. They have just been kind of lucky, though, I will be saying. And again, just after talking about Tyler Lockett, both teams combined for 2 for 24 on 3rd down in this game. And the Seahawks have been a little lucky with how their offense has been going. I need some more consistent production out of them as a term of the offense I think they are capable of being. Currently on the season, they are 13 for 39, which is 33% on 3rd down. They have not had more than 4 3rd down conversions on the year. Between Lockett having a ton of deep ball success and them just not being able to extend drives, it is something of note that we were thinking that they're going to be a better overall offense coming out of 2020 after they were so strong in the first half and so poor in the second half. But now I think there's going to be a real signal. It's like, hey, is it on the new offensive coordinator? Is it on Pete Carroll? Is it on the personnel? This was technically sort of a tough showing for them. They come away with a win, so I think that is a net positive for them. But it's something to be considered about. Can they be a week-to-week offense that has real strong consistency? I'd like to see more of that. Over to San Francisco, Jimmy G hurt in this game to miss possibly a few weeks, possibly no weeks, as he's not been ruled out for week 5 with a calf contusion. Trent Williams also suffered a non-serious shoulder injury, which is good because he's one of the best offensive linemen in football. Moving on to, again, I don't want to spend too much time on Trey Lance because yes, I think he was good in the second half. A good amount of yards came on the one completely ridiculous play with Samuel. We'll talk about it when we get to him. But I don't think Lance is going to be starting next week, so it's really not pertinent in redraft to spend too much time on Lance. And if we talk about him, it'd be more on the Wednesday or Friday show more than here, because I just don't think he's going to be the starter after the relief performance he showed here in week 4. Sermon, the exclusive rusher here, all 19 carries of any running backs were from him. So something really I still don't know who's really going to take this job. Elijah Mitchell wasn't active for this game, but him, at least, we saw Kyle Juszczyk, getting in there, getting in touches. But Jeff Wilson will be active at some point this year. If he is, again, out there in your leagues, you should be taking him and just dropping on your IR spot if you do have spots available, because I don't know what's going to happen when Mitchell's active, and I don't know what's going to happen when Jeff Wilson is around either. But Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, one day will make sense. I don't know what day that will be. It's not today. But that one play with every Seahawk and their entire secondary covering Brandon Ayuk, and Salmon just gets loose for a 76-yard score, his second massive touchdown this season. I don't understand it. Great for people who have Deebo Samuel. Still a lot of pain for people who have Brandon Ayuk. At a certain point, opposing defenses have to account for Samuel, and it's just not really occurring just yet, and it's very strange to me. George Kittle, though, 20 total targets over the last 2 weeks. Fortunately, only 4 receptions in this game, but that's the work we want to see comparing the total 9 targets he had through weeks 1 and 2. This is the George Kittle. Even if he doesn't come down with the receptions, you want this heavy workload for a player that we thought of as a top 3 tight end going into the season. We're going to see the other top 3 tight end in 5 minutes if the game hasn't even started with this LA Chargers game. So we're going to run through these last 2 games really quickly because I want to watch this game. Pittsburgh versus Green Bay. Green Bay wins 27-17. Starting on the Pittsburgh side, Ben is toast. He is total toast. He is a big old toasty toast. We saw Juju Smith-Schuster calling it a Ben problem on the sideline. We do not like to see that. But he has his favorites, and that is Deontay Johnson and Damian Harris. They are absolute must-starts with how he favors them and possibly how he can only get the ball to them with how they are running their routes and how deep they are. But Ben, I still say Ben might be awful, but Haskins or Rudolph, I do not think are better options. I guess there's a huge problem with Cam Newton because I also don't know if he's the answer, but Big Ben and these other guys are all probably not. Pittsburgh is the only team in the AFC North who's currently not 3-1. This season is getting away from them quickly, so something needs to be done. Over on the Green Bay side, one big thing was Rodgers. This is possibly a tough matchup. They don't light the world on fire, Rodgers and Devontae Adams. But with MVS set to miss some time, Randall Cobb should be on the waiver lookout. Yes, he scored 2 touchdowns. Let's not chase points in that sort of regard. But if he's going to be the second best receiver for them, that is something of note for at least a team that I think is going to be very efficient in getting the ball to the players they want. So if Randall Cobb is going to do that, good for us. The more worrying note, though, was A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. Just straight up kind of split the carries down the middle. Jones was somewhat banged up after week 3. So if this is something to be a lingering issue, for the most part, A.J. Dillon is rostered in every single league. So it's not like he's someone that should go out and be looked for on the waivers. But that is just something of note. And Robert Tonyan has failed to get to 10 yards. Again, 7 targets, 2 receptions for 8 yards. Felt pretty good about saying he was a very firm start, one of the lowest rankers on him this week. Probably going to keep doing that going forward because Robert Tonyan, all his points came from 1 or 2 plays back when he scored. Has been a terrible tight end so far this season. Do not start him. Last game. This game is going to start in any minute. Tampa Bay versus New England. The big old Brady Bowl was a big old disappointment. I had a lot more fun just looking at stuff on Instagram on my phone, and Instagram exploded today. And so did Facebook and every other social media app in the world. So it's been a disaster. But starting over with Tampa Bay, this is no touchdowns for Brady in back-to-back weeks. After I and everyone else in the world wanted to be a top 5 quarterback in this situation. It looks like the hype got to us because this is now back-to-back weeks with no scores for him, which means also no scores for the wide receivers. He has no passing touchdowns. I think they got some rushing work, though, both him and Godwin in week 3 against the Rams. But again, a little bit of no consistency here from the receivers. The highest ranked one, wide receiver was Godwin. He was the worst of the 3. You're never going to start. I didn't rank OJ Howard. I was happy because I think he got no yards on 1 target. Cameron Brate was fine. But the running backs are really the big point of contention. I saw a lot of people talking about, is Ronald Jones droppable? And we just had this issue with like DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault. When you have contentious, groupings of players on a team, if an injury happens, the other guys shoot up because now you're going to have more focused work to them. So we just saw Chark and Shenault. This feels the same situation. Can you drop Ronald Jones if you want to? Sure. If he's your worst player on your team, by all means, go out if you need to make a move. But Leonard Fournette is for sure the better running back on the team. But if anything were to happen to him, or if they decide to just let Ronald Jones just go out and take primary work or whatever it may be, it's a long season. So if Ronald Jones, at a certain point, he can be a load and lock sort of play if anything happens to Fournette, and you're going to be kicking yourself if you ever dropped him. But if you want to, I'm not stopping you. And one last team, New England. There was no recommended plays from this game. Now, I think that Mac Jones played pretty good. I'll say that. I think Jacoby Myers will someday score a touchdown because he's getting a ton of targets. Top 10 in the NFL right now at the receiver position in targets. He's up to, again, 163 career targets with no touchdowns. But, man, all players combined for -1 rushing against Tampa Bay. We're just going to never start anyone who's going to run the ball against them. It's just not happening. But Ramondre Stevenson inactive for this game. Still curious to see what the rushing attack is going to be like when he is in there. But for right now, Damon Harris is going to be the lead guy. Again, no real rushing work, just all receiving work for him in this one. We need to just see what goes down with them when we have a little bit better matchup than Tampa Bay. It's also nice of Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith to show up. Both score a touchdown in this and basically just dip out for the rest of the game. These guys have continued to disappoint me from the preseason notions of them. Anyway, with that, wrapping up here, this Monday Night Football game is starting when we see you guys on Wednesday. But the problem on Wednesday is I have to cover a Board of Education meeting for college. So that means I will not be doing a live show of both Off the Grid and of GR Weekly on Wednesday. Now, where those shows will be coming out on Wednesday or Thursday, I do not know. But I do know is that they will not be at the scheduled times. So there'll be recordings and then posted through our Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel. So either follow me on Twitter, @Methodical1, or the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel for the information on that when we do have those episodes go up. But if this is first time or last time that you have shared your time with me, I appreciate it. Thank you for the nice words in the chat there. Thank you, Rick. But with that, I'm going to be signing off here until, again, whenever those shows do come up, whether Wednesday or on Thursday, because, again, I do not know when I'll be done with the unfortunate schoolwork. That is my main thing or my other thing that's going on in my life. So, so with that, we'll see you again when I see you. I've been Matt McCarthy for GrindRatings.com, and we're going to see you guys